Tonight we're talking about a book that sits with its head high on the Booker Prize long list of 2020. A book that has made a splash on the scene. A book that I think, well, we won't get into what I think yet, is written by a debut novelist by the name of Douglas Stuart. Critically acclaimed, critically adored book, Shuggie Bain, a novel by Douglas Stuart. And we're going to talk about if it deserves to be on the long list, if I think it's going to make the short list, and if I think it's going to win the prize. Now, you in the future, you already know who won the prize. You could sit down and Google it. That's fine. We in the present, we don't know. We don't know. We don't even know who's going to be on the short list. Make yourselves comfortable. We're talking Shuggie Bain tonight. Booker Prize long listed book in 2020. Let's get into the novel.
The room turned golden. The flames climbed the synthetic curtains and started rushing towards the ceiling. Dark smoke raced up as though fleeing from the greedy fire. He would have been scared, but his mother seemed completely calm, and the room was never more beautiful as the light cast dancing shadows on the walls and the paisley wallpaper came alive like 1,000 smoky fishes. Agnes never moved. She just closed her eyes and sang her sad song.
What is Shuggie Bain about? What is this novel? Why is everyone talking about it? Why is it on the long list? Why will it or will it not make the short list? Shuggie Bain takes place in Glasgow, Scotland. Glasgow. I don't know how to say it because I am an ignorant American. You'll find many of us here on this side of the pond. Ignorant fools. We speak one language usually. Takes place in Glasgow in the 1980s. We bump up against the 90s. We step and tiptoe into the 90s for a second. But the majority of this story takes place in the 80s. And we follow the story of the Bain family. Now, the book is called Shuggie Bain. Is it about Shuggie Bain? It is about Shuggie Bain. Yes. The sun that the rest of the planets in this book orbit around is Agnes Bain. Agnes Bain is the mother of Shuggie Bain. She's the mother of Catherine, Shuggie's older sister, and Leek, Shuggie's older brother. And Shuggie Bain is the youngest of the family. And Agnes is the mother. And for the majority of the story, she is the single mother of these kids. And she is a suffering alcoholic. It is bleak. It is tragic. It is painful to read. It is a novel that follows Agnes as she suffers with alcoholism. And Shuggie, her youngest son, living with an alcoholic mother and at the same time dealing with all the intense challenges that a young boy in Glasgow, Scotland, in the 1980s would deal with if he were queer. Shuggie Bain is a young queer boy with an alcoholic mother living in the projects of Glasgow, Scotland during the 1980s. That sets the stage for what this story is about. And therein, my friends, lies the problem with this novel. No, I'm not going to go there yet. I am not going to go there yet. I'm not going to feed that monster just yet. We're going to talk a little bit more synopsis around Shuggie Bain. So what do we have? We have Shuggie, we have Agnes. We watch her story of alcoholism unfold. We watch the highs, we watch the lows. We watch the father of Shuggie, Big Shug, or Shug, as he's referred to often throughout the novel. We catch glimpses of Catherine, the oldest sister, and Leek, the older brother. But mostly what we're dealing with in this novel is the story of Agnes Bain. And Douglas Stuart gives us something remarkable in this novel. Let me tell you why. Let me tell you why. Let me tell you why. Calm down, calm down, calm down. Let me talk about it. This novel, whew. Is this a story of how the human spirit triumphs over our demons and over alcoholism and over the challenges that the Bain family experiences through this novel? It is not a story of human triumph in that way. It is not a story of human triumph in the way that you expect in happy endings. This novel is not of the type of chords that resolve in that pleasant, comfortable way that we long to see it resolve. This is not a story about the human spirit triumphing over alcoholism and families sticking together out of love and devotion to one another. This is a story of human triumph in a different way. And to me, this is a story primarily about the indelible impression that people can leave in our lives. We watch Agnes truly suffer with the disease of alcoholism. And Douglas Stuart writes it so exquisitely, so tenderly. Douglas Stuart crafted this novel from a place of knowledge and understanding. This was written in a way to help him process the trauma and experiences of his own childhood more than it is about Douglas Stuart embodied in Shuggie Bain. It is about Douglas Stuart's mother embodied in Agnes Bain. And we see Douglas Stuart craft and write and mold and shape and create Agnes Bain from a template in his mind of his own experiences and his own lovely mother. You can feel this through the writing. You can feel Agnes is so dynamic a character. So is Shuggie. So is Leek. So are all the characters that Douglas Stuart creates for us in Shuggie Bain. They are so dynamic. It is like he wielded some kind of black magic scepter and captured human beings in these pages. What he gives us is character development that the masters achieve. These, to me, are characters so nuanced, so subtle, so complex, so dynamic, so developed, so dimensional. These characters are human. He does not spoon feed us the human elements of these characters in word. You have to feel it, and you can't but feel it. Agnes. We see Agnes the mother. We see Agnes the alcoholic. We see Agnes the teenage, lonely-hearted girl. We see Agnes in her longing. We see Agnes in her pride. We see Agnes in her shame. We see Agnes in her triumph. We see Agnes in her love and her care. We see Agnes in her embarrassment. We see Agnes in her faults and sins and the way she violates even the most basic human codes. We see Agnes in her selfishness, but we see her at the very same moment in her tragic love. She is stunning. One of his biggest strengths in Shuggie Bain is his character development, is how masterfully he crafts his characters. The metaphor that rises in my mind that is relevant to the setting of this book, Scotland, is peat. The peat that is the organic decay over thousands of Scottish summers, breaking down in these peat bogs and peat marshes and becoming this organic compounded material called peat that in Scotland and Ireland and other places they use for heating their homes and for smoking their whiskey and as a resource. That is what Shuggie Bain, the novel, is. And we warm ourselves at the triumphant fire of this novel. Is this book thematically about the woes of the Bain family? Is this book about the tragedy of addiction and the suffering, difficult wrestle that people have with alcoholism? Is this book about the way alcoholism can rip a family apart? Or is this another book about an obvious tragedy that we've read and seen in movies and heard 1,000 times? I will not accept that about Shuggie Bain. Douglas Stuart gives us a story that is much more about the indelible imprint and impression and impact and dents and truth that a person that causes you to suffer, but also causes you to love. A person who gives their strength while at the same time being so tragically broken and so tragically subdued. That, to me, is what the book is about. And without giving any spoilers, though I want to so badly, because there is a scene in this book that to me is the mark that this book is meant to leave. It is the moment that I can't imagine Douglas Stuart writing without weeping. It is the moment that we see Agnes give to Shuggie her strength. And that moment marks Shuggie on a visceral, deep soul level that we see it surface for him as strength that she gave him later. That is the triumph of this novel. That is the fire we warm ourselves at. I saw one critic say that this book beats us down and breaks us open so that we can stand up again, having swelled with empathy and having had our hearts grow more spacious and more full of love for other people. Now, getting on to the problems of this novel. I promised you I wasn't going to leave you hanging on the problems of this novel. The problem and the way that I feel this novel is going to suffer, what I think this novel is going to experience. What you have here is just like a solid novel. It is solid and almost, in one way, too solid for its own good. There's a sense that this is a story that has been told before. This is a story I have heard before. I don't need another one of these stories. And so I think that Shuggie Bain feels too obvious. There isn't really anything groundbreaking that Douglas Stuart is doing with this novel. He's not offering us something groundbreaking and revolutionary in the art of the novel. This is something solid and expected. It maybe has a feeling of being overproduced. And so the shame of it, honestly, the shame of it, because I don't think that is fair to Douglas Stuart. This is a debut novel and he's punching above his class. Nay, he is pummeling above his weight class, and he deserves to be recognized for that. But I think because of the nature of it, not fumbling a little bit, of not feeling groundbreaking, of not tapping into the rawness that we have come to desire in our art. Does Shuggie Bain belong on the long list? Absolutely. This book is so beautiful. It is so good. You know, the dedication page, this book is dedicated for my mother, AED. And then at the end, in the acknowledgments, he says, the first line he says, "Above all, I owe everything to the memories of my mother and her struggle, and to my brother who gave me everything he could." Whew. Douglas Stuart poured himself out on pages for us. Thank you, Douglas Stuart, for this beautiful novel. Okay, guys, so we're going to jump into the data right now. So you can see here that we started out with simply just a 7, and it started to get better as we went, and it only dips one time throughout this novel, and that's early on around pages 70, 75 to 100, and then from there we watch as it's just a solid 8 for the next 200 pages almost. Just a solid 8, and then we have this triumphant moment that to me is the moment that the book is written for. To me, this is the moment that the book is written for. And so we climb up to a 9 there, and from there we settle back into an 8. I'm loving it. I'm enjoying it. It's good. It's heartbreaking. I'm walking along with these characters and feeling their experiences, and that just continues to go until the very end. And the end dips back up to a 9 because the ending, to me, the last section, is important and is beautiful, and it calls back to that previous 9 that the book, for me, orbits around. And so that is the timeline of every 25 pages and the way that I experienced this novel. The next visualization here, as you can see, we have 35% of the time I was just landing on the word good. And then another 30% of the time I was in this place of just loving it. And that was kind of what I was feeling, was I'm just loving this. And you can see every single one of these in the legend here are positive things. There was a moment I was on the edge of my seat. There was a moment that I was really deeply moved. I was unraveled. It was heartbreaking. I couldn't put it down, etc. These were the words that characterize the experience of reading Shuggie Bain. Shuggie Bain, will it make the shortlist? I believe it's going to make the shortlist. I'm seeing a lot of good things out there on this book. It has a really good high rating on Goodreads. I think that the judges are going to experience it as something beautiful, as something worthy of the shortlist and worthy of elevating to even more people. So yes, I do believe that Shuggie Bain is going to make the shortlist. Will it win? Douglas Stuart is such a solid, classic writer. With that said, he's not really experimenting. It doesn't feel that like he's experimenting with the language. So will this win? I don't think it will win, but I am very confident it will be on the shortlist. Okay, guys, we've got less than a week before the shortlist is announced. We need you to go into the description of this video, take the poll there. It is one question, simply asking you to predict what 6 books you think are going to make the shortlist, being announced Tuesday, September 15th, 2020. I need you to go and vote. If you haven't voted already, go and just submit your prediction. We are going up against Kieran of KDBooks, the Booker Boy, the founder of the Booker Boy Book Club, the guy who has drawn us to these books. Many of us who knew nothing about this prize before, but he has bet his beard, and I know you, internet, and you know me. We all want to see this guy look like an egg when he shaves that big red beard. So, if we predict better, which data can help us do, and you can help us gather data by filling out the poll and sending it to your friends. I mean, you guys saw when the long list was announced. What did we hear Kieran say over and over and over again? I've not heard of that. I've not heard of that. I've not heard of that. That's what we heard Kieran say over and over and over again. So let's do it again. Let's get this short list predicted. Let's predict more than Kieran does. And let's hear him go, I've not heard of that, while he shaves his beard. Let's do it. Are you with me? We got to show the world. If you like Shuggie Bain, leave a comment. If you haven't read it and want to read it, go read it. If you didn't like it, tell me why. I'd love to hear why. And go vote. Booker 2020. I'll see you in the next video.